When building something completely new, and this is like the biggest revolution in the history of humanity, then need to move fast, we need to break things, we need to do a lot of noise just to progress, and then things will settle. Regulation will kick in, legislators will start acting, law cases will be resolved, and by rulings we will know what's good and what's bad. So I actually think that all of this chaos is really, really, really good in this point of time. And in a few years, we'll all look back at that and we'll think it was a completely crazy time. But I think that this is essential to build the future.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Handelsblatt Disrupt, dem Podcast über neue Ideen, Disruptionen und die Zukunft der digitalen Welt. Mein Name ist Larissa Holzki und ich begrüße Sie heute in Vertretung von unserem Chefredakteur Sebastian Mattes. Wenn wir vom Boom der künstlichen Intelligenz sprechen, dann denken die meisten an Firmen wie den ChatGPT-Entwickler OpenAI und vielleicht an Wettbewerber wie Anthropic oder Mistral. Wir denken auch an Nvidia, den Chipkonzern, der dank seiner begehrten KI-Chips gerade als erstes Unternehmen überhaupt die Börsenbewertung von $4 Billionen geknackt hat. Und dann sind da natürlich auch noch die Cloud-Anbieter wie Microsoft, AWS und Google, die mit ihren Datenzentren davon profitieren, dass wir im KI-Zeitalter massiv mehr Rechenleistung brauchen. Es gibt aber noch eine andere Gruppe von Unternehmen, die für den KI-Boom essentiell ist: die Datenlieferanten. Um große Sprachmodelle zu entwickeln, braucht es nämlich riesige Mengen an Trainingsdatensätzen mit nahezu dem gesamten Wissen des Internets. Und die immer autonomeren KI-Agenten brauchen auch Live-Daten, damit ihre Antworten aktuell sind. Eine dieser Firmen ist Bright Data aus Israel. Den Chef, Lenchner, habe ich diese Woche bei einer Konferenz in Paris kennengelernt und direkt zu Disrupt eingeladen. Ob und wie seine Firma an Daten von unserer und vielleicht auch ihrer Website kommt, warum er sich mit dem Unternehmen X von Elon Musk und dem Facebook-Konzern Meta vor Gericht gestritten hat und wie seine Firma damit umgeht, wenn Teile des Teams plötzlich zum Militärdienst eingezogen werden oder sich im Schutzraum vor Raketenangriffen schützen müssen, darüber sprechen wir in der heutigen Folge.
Nach einer kurzen Unterbrechung geht es gleich weiter. Bleiben Sie dran.
Milliarden für die Bundeswehr, aber was passiert eigentlich mit dem ganzen Geld?
Genau das fragen wir uns im neuen Handelsblatt Defense Briefing. Ich bin Frank Specht, Berichter aus Berlin über Sicherheits- und Verteidigungspolitik.
Und ich bin Markus Fasse, Unternehmensreporter. Gemeinsam schauen wir, wer profitiert, was läuft und was nicht.
Jetzt anmelden unter handelsblatt.com/defense und jeden Mittwoch topaktuelle Infos zur Rüstung und Verteidigung direkt ins Postfach.
Wir freuen uns auf Sie.
Übrigens haben wir beim Handelsblatt gerade ein großes Sommerspecial. Aktuell können Sie sich statt 4 Wochen 6 Wochen lang Zugriff auf unsere digitalen Inhalte sichern. Für nur €1. Das ist die Gelegenheit, sich von unserem journalistischen Angebot zu überzeugen und auch im Urlaub erstklassig informiert zu bleiben. Diese besondere Vorteilsaktion finden Sie jetzt unter handelsblatt.com/Sommer. Und damit direkt zu meinem Gespräch mit Lenchner von Bright Data. Hello and welcome to the show from Tel Aviv. Great to have you here, Lenchner.
Hey, Larissa, thanks for having me.
We recently met at an AI conference in Paris. There were over 5,000 people attending from hundreds of companies working on cloud infrastructure, developing AI models, or building completely new applications and AI agents. ChatGPT was launched 2.5 years ago. How have you experienced the rise of the AI hype since then, and where do you think we stand today?
Yeah, so we met in Paris. It was much bigger than I anticipated, to be honest. It was an amazing event. And actually, well, at least the people that I talked to, many of them came out of Europe, which just shows how big it was and how big the whole industry is becoming. I think that like everyone understands and feels the AI and how it, the implications of AI on our day-to-day. But from a business perspective, as a company that was kind of born to this world without even planning towards that, we see how the future is going to look like. So by being maybe the largest web data vendor for all of the AI giants, we could not anticipate what what's happening right now. Since GPT started, as you said, 2.5 years ago, that has become by far the number one use case for Bright Data as a web data collection platform. And in scales we never seen before. And a lot of what we're doing is building more capacity just to hold the scale and make sure we're able to sustain the requirements of all of these companies.
And right now, AI agents seem to be the big topic. Tech companies are promising that soon these autonomous agents will book our flights for us and that entire departments in companies will be automated. We'll dive into that in more detail in a moment. But how realistic do you think these promises actually are?
Very realistic. I don't see a scenario when this is not going to happen. It's true that the adoption is not there yet. It's mostly because the consumer-facing application layer is not ready, but we see everyone building towards that. So it's going to explode. I think that's just like, ChatGPT didn't happen in one day. In March of 23, they worked on that for like many years, and a lot of talented people working days and nights, and then it was a one-night success. I think the same is going to happen here. We're seeing the amazing companies, big and small, that are using our browser infrastructure and other tools, not just Bright Data, to build. And it's going to be a one-night success, or like an over one-night success that people are working on it for years. It's not a question. I think that in the next year or so, we'll start to see the initial versions that all of us can actually use, and then it's going to be an exponential improvement.
And Paris, where we just met, has positioned itself as Europe's AI capital. President Emmanuel Macron is pushing hard to promote France as a tech hub. And the city is home to Mistral, the only European company so far that has built language models on par with OpenAI and Anthropic. From your Israeli perspective, how do you see Europe's chances in the global AI race?
So we're a global company in the sense that we're actually serving everyone just because our unique technology. So we see what you just said. So it's not just Mistral. We also see other amazing companies in Paris specifically, by the way, like H Company that is doing some amazing fundamental things in AI with a lot of research behind it, and obviously Mistral and others. It's an arms race, and I think what President Macron said and announced is important. That's the right motion, that's the right mindset, but eventually it's all about money, and it's all about investment. It's investment in education in early stages, then education on the more advanced stages in university and colleges and other research entities. And obviously also giving the right benefits to the talent to stay in Europe and build in Europe, and not move to the Silicon Valley. And we all hear and read about the recent poaching wars between the large AI giants in the Valley. I do see it happens in Europe. I think that Europe has one holdback or setback that can make it harder, and this is the unique data protection legislations and regulations that generally I appreciate and like, because it makes things very clear. There's like no gray areas, and I actually like to operate that way. But sometimes when innovation is the highest priority, maybe companies or individuals will prefer to build outside of Europe just to move faster.
This is an interesting point. Here in Europe, many people complain that we are losing a lot of talent to the US because the conditions there are simply better. You, on the other hand, live in a constant state of conflict and war. Just a few weeks ago, there was the 12-day war with Iran. Why do people choose to stay and work for a tech company in Israel?
Yeah, so that's a good question, which I can probably talk for a couple of hours about from a more philosophical point of view, but I'll try to summarize my answer, at least from my point of view as an Israeli that built a company in Israel, even though half of the companies were bigger now, so half of the companies outside of Israel. I think that this gives us a lot of perspective in life and kind of reduce us being worried about potential risks. So if like the usual person that lives in a more calm country somewhere in the world, their concerns might be, picking a restaurant to eat dinner tonight, which is a completely legitimate concern. Sometimes I have these concerns as well. Here, in many cases, is just checking where's the nearest shelter because someone is going to shoot rockets at you. So it's not a good thing, but it gives a lot of perspective. And when we go and build something new that no one has tried to build before, like we're doing in many cases here at Bright Data, and in many cases, it also means that maybe we'll piss off a few other companies bigger than us in the world. And if we believe that this is the right thing to do, then we're just doing that because there's like harder stuff in life, for example, running to a shelter. So that kind of puts everything in perspective. And I think it also builds a lot of resilience. And I see it here on me and all of the other employees that can open a laptop and write an amazing piece of code while sitting in shelter, and everything is as usual. And the alarm siren is off, and then you go out and drink coffee with friends and keep working. So it's just it's kind of a crazy mindset, but it's really good for innovation and to move like fast with no real drama and concern, just build and progress.
Mm-hmm. And how does the political situation affect your company in a worst-case scenario? Could half of your team be called up for military service?
Not half of the team, but sometimes it happens. And actually, when it happened before, something beautiful happened to the company. So, like if you are not being called to protect the country, you have this internal feeling and obligation that you need to work twice as hard to compensate on those who got called. And I have this graph that I'm showing internally in like all hands meeting and internal meetings that shows the correlation between people getting called and the progress of the company. It goes together. So every time there's such an event, then the company is growing, the revenues are growing, we release more products, we move faster. So everyone are just working twice as hard and more efficient. So it's, that's a crazy situation that I won't say we like it, but we know how to operate in these situations really well.
Yes, and I'm getting a bit of goosebumps here hearing that. So before we get deep into data and scraping now, tell us a bit about yourself. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I'm Israeli, born and grown in Israel, still here, traveling quite a lot as a CEO of a global company, but still here. No plans to move out. I'm married with 3 little kids. And I've been a product person all of my grown life, always liked to build stuff, usually around web and internet. And I actually joined the company. I haven't founded the company. I joined the company in 2015 when it was very small, just started, as a product guy. And I started building. And we grew very, very fast because we kind of solved a huge problem in a very innovative way. So business came to us, companies came to us to help to buy that solution that I assume we're going to talk about. And after 3 years in the company, I became the COO. And in late 2017, Bright Data was acquired by a private equity firm. And a year after, in 2018, I took over as CEO.
And before that, I read that your first job as a teenager was cleaning toilets at a movie theater. From there, you worked your way up to your first manager role. What was that like?
Okay, you did your research. So,
I did.
Yeah, I've been grown up, I think, like the whole family. And it's not that, it's really common here, I would say, just to like make sure that you are independent. There's always like a safety net, but try to be as independent as you can. So I think it was like at the age of 14 when I got my first job, indeed being a cleaning movie theaters in my hometown in Israel. And I just loved it, just, earning my own salary. And I've been doing that since then. I never took a dime from my parents since the age of 14. And I think I even I was a pretty good cleaner.
and you built up a whole team.
Yeah, I started recruiting my friends from school, and also I remember that I had to fire a few. That was the first interesting experience in managing people. And but that was quite a while ago. And since then, I built my own companies and sold a couple, and then I joined Bright Data.
Of course. And in Israel, everyone has to serve in the military. The most sought after roles are in elite units that focus on tech and intelligence, some of which are known for producing cybersecurity founders later on. Where did you serve?
I was actually a combat officer in the IDF. Still doing a reserve army here and there when needed. I served for a few years, and that's also an interesting experience. When I think that I got to command on a platoon of probably over 100 soldiers when I was 20 years old, with a lot of responsibility. Unlike managing a company as big as it can be, managing a company is not a life and death situation. And when I was 20, I got a lot of responsibility, and that context is life and death situation. So again, a lot of perspective in quite a young age, and I think this is very helpful in building character towards being an adult.
Mm-hmm. And you were not the tech person from the beginning. I believe you started studying marine biology, but you didn't finish. Why did you quit?
Nice. Okay, you know it all. So I love the ocean. We have quite a lot of it here in Israel. I've been surfing, wave surfing my whole life. I've been scuba diving my whole life and doing some free diving as well lately. So my obvious direction was to go and study to be marine biologist, and I only did it for one semester. What happened is that I just love building stuff. It doesn't matter if it's physical, just taking a small engine and building a small remote car with my older son today, or building websites and products over the internet. So during the first semester, I actually was able to build and sell my first internet company, and I just realized that that's more fun than studying, but so I don't have any academic degree actually, but maybe when I retire, I'll get back to that part.
You're successful anyway. So let's talk about Bright Data. Your company specializes in web scraping, collecting large amounts of data from across the internet and delivering it to your clients. Some of our listeners might not know exactly what web scraping is. Can you explain it in simple terms?
Sure. So the internet is the largest piece of information in the history of humanity. Everything is there. When you think about it, some will go to history books and the Holy Bible and whatever. It's true that it's older, but even all of that information has presence in the internet. And what you and I are just recording now is going to be added as additional information to the internet. So that's just the biggest database of humanity. And actually the growth pace of the data on the internet is accelerating every second. Now, it's just a huge library. And if all of the information is in this huge library, a lot of people want to get that information to learn, to build, to progress. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to collect this data in large scale for a few reasons. First reason is you don't know where to look. It's so big, it's like trying to understand the size of the universe and where each star is located. You can't really map that. This is something that we're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And then the second problem to solve is that actually the collection of the data in large scale, especially when there are companies that are proactively trying to stop that. Many websites, even a lot of our own customers that are using Bright Data to scrape data, to collect data from the web, are trying to block other customers of Bright Data from scraping their own websites, even though this information is public. So the value of data has become so big, so valuable for so many companies. We'll share a few use cases, but AI is the most obvious one, that all of these companies are trying to keep this data only for themselves while using Bright Data to scrape other websites.
We're coming to that.
But it's important to say that we are a technology company, a product company, and what we're building is technology and infrastructure to allow today almost 20,000 customers to collect data from the internet as long as it's public and just sitting there waiting for someone to collect it.
So let me ask the obvious question. Are you the company behind the massive data sets used by OpenAI, Mistral, and Anthropic to train their AI models? And if so, how has the AI boom affected your business?
Without mentioning specific names, I would love to, but usually I don't get the permission to do so. The high-level answer is absolutely yes. Our infrastructure is being used by the largest AI companies, the LLM labs, enterprises that are building AI, and also any other company practically. Just think about an e-commerce platform that wants to understand how their competitors are working. They need to scrape that data constantly. And so like 30 different industries, 20,000 customers, including largest AI companies, are using our infrastructure to collect the data from the internet, sometimes in the form of a structured data set in order to train the next best model, and sometimes in real time while you are using a chatbot and waiting for the output to come up on the screen. Sometimes it will be Bright Data in the background that is collecting the data in real time and ingesting it into the model in real time.
Two major tech companies are known to be your clients: Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. Interestingly, this came to light through lawsuits. Both companies sued you for scraping their platforms. Funny enough, they buy data from external websites through you, but they also sued you at the same time. How do you remember that lawsuit, and why was it important for the broader AI ecosystem?
Yeah, that's indeed one of the most interesting times, at least in my career, and actually had a lot of impact on what is happening today in the AI industry and on the future. So it was discovered through these lawsuits, Meta versus Bright Data and X versus Bright Data, that these companies use Bright Data to collect data from the web. It's not surprising for anyone who knows this industry. Everyone needs data, and being the largest web scraping company, high chances everyone, that most companies that needs data will be a Bright Data customer one way or another. It was roughly in 2023 that these companies decided that the value, that's my interpretation, that the value of the data is so big that they want to be the only one who gets access to the data on their platform, even though it's public. In each of these platforms, you as the user can decide if the data is private and only your friends can see it, for example, or if it's public and everyone can see that. And that's, I think, a good a way to get the user the power to decide who's going to see the data. But they sued us claiming that we are not allowed to collect the public data from their platforms. And we had discussions, but eventually we decided that as the leaders of this industry, we need to prove that our stance is the right one. And we said that, let's meet in court. And in both cases, and all of it happened in 2024, we prevailed and we achieved victory. And today, you can still use Bright Data to collect public information from these websites and every other website in the internet. And it was also a good opportunity to set a very important precedent that is now has become the default in the world, which is what public data means.
And by public data, you mean data that's accessible, no logins, no paywalls, no private data. Is that correct?
Exactly. This was our position that was agreed with the court in these two cases. By the way, these two cases happened in California, two different judges that reapproved our position. And that's today's understanding and standard for what public information in the internet means. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't find personal information on the public domain. But for that, you have other rules and regulation and legislation like the GDPR, the CC, I forgot the initials in the California, which is great because it's very clear what you can and cannot do with private information, personal information. But at least now it's clear what public means. And just think about the world in which Bright Data would have lost these two cases. How would XAI, how would Meta, Llama models would train if they can't collect data from the web? So I actually think that they're happy that they lost.
And it's been a few months since there was a major debate around whether AI companies should make sure that hate speech doesn't end up in their models in the first place. The companies argue that you actually need some of that content so the chatbot can learn to recognize when someone is trying to get it to say something harmful or illegal. Just this week, Elon Musk's Grok bot was once again in the spotlight for spreading anti-Semitic content. What's your take? Should this kind of toxic material be part of AI training data, or should it be filtered out from the start?
Yeah, so I think that everything that we're seeing today, the chatbots, the agents that are being built, all of these companies that are doing amazing things, almost magic, eventually everything will be condensed into a brain of a robot. This is where the future is heading. And we need that robot to be safe, secure, polite, and to act as the best human a human can be, just as a robot that never gets tired and knows everything. So guardrails are extremely important. I think that it's good to have Grok because Elon Musk and the culture that he's building in his companies is very important to understand the limits. So I actually think that what happened with Grok this week is important because it puts a mirror of the risks. And when technology and progress are the top priority, and they are top priority, I think that it's actually good to have such cases that will happen as long as, the company acknowledge them, and they have, and fix them, and they have. I don't think that anyone, or maybe I missed that, but I haven't seen anyone claiming that this is how it should be. But it's good that it happens once in a while, and we are being shocked a bit just to understand what can happen and where we should put the borders and how we should build the guardrails.
This is an interesting perspective, and here's an important detail. X has instructed its bot not to shy away from politically incorrect statements as long as they are well-sourced, how they say. On top of that, the bot is supposed to take a generally skeptical stance toward the media. Does that worry you?
I think that, again, it's under the context of let's just do extreme things so we'll understand the borders. But I can't really tell what happens in these people's minds, but I assume that they also understand that when these technologies will be something that, everyone has in his home, then it can't act like that. But again, when building something completely new, and this is like the biggest revolution in the history of humanity, at least this is how I see it, then need to move fast. We need to break things. We need to do a lot of noise just to progress. And then things will settle. Regulation will kick in. Legislators will start acting. Law cases will be resolved. And by rulings, we will know what's good and what's bad. You see it not just in what you just described, but also in our cases that I talked about, or the recent Anthropic case about copyright and what you can and cannot do for training the model. So I actually think that all of this chaos is really, really, really good in this point of time. And in a few years, we'll all look back at that and we'll think it was a completely crazy time. But I think that this is essential to build the future.
Nach einer kurzen Unterbrechung geht es gleich weiter. Bleiben Sie dran.
Rüstung als wirtschaftlicher Motor? Die sicherheitspolitische Zeitenwende bringt Milliardeninvestitionen. Doch was bedeutet das für den Industriestandort Deutschland? Bei der Handelsblatt-Konferenz Wirtschaftsfaktor Rüstung im September treffen sich Entscheiderinnen und Entscheider aus Politik, Wirtschaft, Wissenschaft und Finanzwelt. Im Fokus industrielle Chancen, technologische Souveränität und neue Allianzen. Jetzt anmelden auf handelsblatt-rüstung.de und mit dem Code PODCAST 15% sparen.
Talking about crazy times. It's been a few years since your company crossed the $100 million revenue mark. Then came the AI boom. Give us a sense of scale. Where do you stand today in terms of revenue, number of employees, and how many clients do you have?
Yeah, so great times also for us. I think that the reason is that for AI specifically, you need three main elements, and we're a third of that. So you need very smart people. We see all of the news, especially in the Silicon Valley, of Meta poaching researchers for hundreds of millions of dollars. And the second thing that you need is a lot of compute and computing power. Everyone knows how NVIDIA trajectory looks like. And the third piece is data, and we're the largest supplier of web data. So it impacts really well on our revenues, profits, pipeline. We're a private company, but I can say that we're going to do hundreds of millions of dollars in the very near future, and also significant profits. We're a very profitable company because we find that way to solve a huge problem in a very efficient way that is driven by our deep understanding of the internet, the innovation in technology. So we're actually not a lot of people for these amounts of revenues. Bright Data today is roughly 400 employees, spread globally. Not a lot of people for a very fast-growing, profitable company, and serving roughly 20,000 customers from all over the world. We're talking about the largest e-commerce players, retailers, largest banks, financial institutes in general, obviously travel companies that are operating online. And we talked enough about the AI giants that most of them are using us in large scale.
Yeah, and it sounds like almost everyone is interested in your data. But on the other hand, Meta and X are not the only companies concerned about you scraping their platforms. I know firsthand that media companies are actively trying to block bots that attempt to scrape their websites. What does that mean for your business?
This has always been the case, that websites, doesn't matter if it's a content creator or e-commerce website, doesn't matter if there are customers, Bright Data or not, are trying to keep the data, the public data, for themselves. I don't think that I will be able to convince them to do otherwise by talking about it, even though I tried many times. But the best I can do is to keep developing the newer technologies that are able to overcome these blocking mechanisms.
I read that your bots can bypass AI blockers by pretending to be real humans. How does that actually work?
That's our bread and butter. This is our obsession for the last decade since we started the company. We have over 5,500 granted patent claims in the US and over the world about all of this technology, and we pretty much innovate everything from scratch in order to be able to do that. So yeah, the secret sauce is to approach a website obviously in a fair, ethical way, just like a human would do. And then the website perceives us as a human, so they will let us in. I think that this is, the world will be a better place if all of the data would have been open to everyone. Just think about the physical world, trying to go into a library to gain knowledge, and I can go in because this is what the library decided, but you can't. It's not fair. So we're trying to solve that unfairness. I won't be cynical about that. That's our business. We're doing good and we're enjoying to do that also from a financial point of view. But this is why we build this technology, to open the access to that data to everyone. Yeah, and a lot. So talking about the content creators, I think that it's very interesting point of time when you and I also talked about it in Paris on stage, where the importance of creating original content like you are doing is maybe more important than ever, because it serves the original purpose of telling the readers and the listeners what is going on in the world, but it also the way that the AI models are training and gaining knowledge. And I think this is very important because this is the future, and I think everyone will agree that this is the future. And
But this is an important point. So from my perspective, high quality content is increasingly hidden behind paywalls. The easily accessible internet is filling up with AI-generated low-quality content. Some warn this could degrade for future AI performance. Do you see this as a real threat?
I don't think I see it as a threat, because I think that the dynamics in the world will just we'll have to change it. I want to explain that point. I think that there's like a complete consensus that, and we're seeing the numbers already, that humans that are using the internet, including probably you and me for sure, are using chatbots more and more. And even if they're using Google, now Google will show you that generative AI answer box. And the reality is that this is how we start to prefer to consume our content. I don't think that in the long term, I don't think that content creators would like to keep their content gated behind the paywall if it means that no one will read their content. So you'll always have the hardcore audience that goes directly to your website. I have many newspapers that I'm happily paying to, and I'm going directly to their website. But that's the long tail. And eventually, I think that the content creators can't allow themselves not to be a part of that. Now, I absolutely think that content creators, especially high-quality content like journalists, needs to be compensated on the hard work. This is why I think that eventually the chatbots themselves will come up with some sort of a compensation model, maybe in the form of advertising, sharing revenues from advertising. But I think that people need to understand that traffic to the websites won't significantly grow.
And Cloudflare has introduced pay-per-crawl, a new business model allowing websites to charge crawlers a micropayment per visit. What exactly does that mean, and do you see this as the future?
I'm not sure. I think it's interesting, and I think it's good to try things. I am less... I don't fully understand what Cloudflare are trying to do, because I don't understand the value to those websites that, quote unquote, they're trying to protect. And I'll explain that again. So they are saying we will, by default, block access to the websites that opted into that beta program. So crawlers won't be able to crawl that content unless they are paying. And they're introducing some sort of model of pay-per-crawl, which is still unclear, but it's okay. They're an amazing company that innovate a lot. It's always better to go out with something as beta and then learn on the go. I appreciate that. But again, it gets us to the same problem. What if someone decides that they don't want, I don't know, the price isn't right, or they don't want to be crawled at all, or whatever? How would that serve that Cloudflare customer in the longer term if their existence will eventually be completely deleted from the internet because the users will go to the chatbots? This is why I don't fully understand what they're doing, but happy that they're trying. I think it is important. From a factual perspective, being the largest scraping company in the world, we haven't seen any actual change. And we are scraping data from websites that are using Cloudflare as usual, even after their announcement on July 1st.
We already touched on autonomous agents briefly. In a time where AI agents can browse the web in real time, why do we still need structured data providers like Bright Data?
I think that what's going to happen not that far away into the future is that indeed agents will rule the internet. So all of us will have an app or something like that. It's not entirely clear yet, that will communicate with, and then that agent will just automate our activity online. The most common thing that I'm seeing now from companies that are building that on top of our browser infrastructure product lines is simple things like ordering food. It sounds simple. Today, it's actually pretty hard. This is why everyone are just building and you don't see an adoption yet. But just think about talking to an app saying, hey, agent, I want a table for that restaurant at 7 p.m. We're going to be 3 people, and that's it. It happens. This is where the world is heading. I think that in parallel, the internet will still be the same as it is today for humans. It's not that humans will stop using the internet. So we're going to enter like a phase of a dual website for each web page, basically. One version that is very ugly in a sense. It will be just code. So the agent can communicate with the website in a very, very efficient and fast way. And a second version, which is just the HTML pages that we know today, so humans can see the same page in a way that they actually understand, the visual way. So that's actually going to create more data in the internet, and training isn't stopping, so the models will always need more data to be smarter, and data as I said earlier in our conversation, more data is just being added to the internet every single second. The growth pace is accelerating. So data collection isn't going to stop, it's just going to increase. We see it in our numbers and the usage numbers. And I think it's going to work well, actually. I think it's going to be like the optimal way to live. You have like an online servant that is doing things for you, things that you don't want to do, but we always want to go to a website to read an article, and we always want to look at the product before we're going to buy it. So we'll have also like the regular internet for humans.
Maybe as a closing question, according to Gartner, AI agents are at the peak of the hype cycle now, meaning their potential may be overestimated. Can you help us with some expectation management? What can agents really do in the near term, and what are the biggest limitations?
I would argue the complete opposite. From what we're seeing, I can't even mention one agent that I'm using. I'm building a lot, I'm playing with it a lot, but on my day-to-day life, I'm still not using a single agent. And I think that this is true for most people. I think that what we're seeing is that everyone are just figuring it out now. I'm talking about the companies that are building the agents and companies like Bright Data that are building a piece of the infrastructure to allow the agents to operate. And I think that only in a few months, maybe a bit longer, we will start seeing adoption from end users, internet users, once these applications will be available for us. Starting with simple tasks like sending an email or booking a restaurant or ordering food, calling an Uber. And then as the trust in this technology will increase, we'll see them automating more important parts of our lives, like maybe financial transactions and things like that. So absolutely disagree with Gartner on that front.
Those were fascinating insights and reflections. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Larissa. Always great talking.
Und damit sind wir auch schon wieder am Ende dieser Folge. Wie immer freue ich mich über Kommentare und Feedback in unserer Handelsblatt Disrupt LinkedIn-Gruppe. Sie können mir aber auch gerne eine E-Mail schicken. Die Details finden Sie in den Shownotes. Herzlichen Dank an dieser Stelle für die Unterstützung an Migo Fecke von Professional Podcasts. Wir melden uns nächste Woche Freitag wieder. Bis dahin wünsche ich Ihnen eine gute Zeit. Ihre Larissa Holzki.
Echter Wandel in Unternehmen ist oft begleitet von Widerständen, Routinen und alten Denkmustern. Der Change Congress setzt genau hier an. Er zeigt, wie Transformation dennoch erfolgreich gelingen kann. 2 Tage jenseits der Buzzwords mit neuen Denkanstößen und Menschen, die Wandel wirklich wollen. Sei dabei, wenn du Herausforderungen mutig angehen und Change aktiv gestalten möchtest. Melde dich jetzt an unter change-congress.de und spare mit dem Code Podcast 10%.